D.C. has to become a very safe place, and we're not going to let anything bad happen to D.C. That's our beautiful D.C., and we're not going to let anything bad, and we'll have something to say about it next week.
The big, beautiful bill is finally heading to President Trump's desk. The lead starts right now. After hours of debate and last-minute deals, House Republicans passed their massive agenda bill just hours ahead of President Trump's deadline. What did GOP leaders promise holdouts to get this across the finish line? Plus, millions of people around the world are using artificial intelligence for daily tasks. But what happens when AI becomes so important your family worries you're losing grip on reality? CNN's Pamela Brown has a stunning story. And Hamas terrorists held him hostage for 18 months. Today, Israeli-American former hostage, Adnan Alexander, was welcomed to the White House. Hear what he said about his time in captivity. Welcome to The Lead. I'm Dana Batch in for Jake Tapper. The U.S. House of Representatives pulled an all-nighter and a few hours ago passed President Trump's massive bill full of tax cuts, spending cuts on key social safety net programs, and spending increases for things like immigration enforcement. This is the first major legislative agenda win for the president this term. Just before the bill passed, House Speaker Mike Johnson said this.
With one big, beautiful bill, we are going to make this country stronger, safer, and more prosperous than ever before. And every American is going to benefit from that. Yeah.
That is not how Democrats see it. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries prolonged passage by speaking and speaking and speaking, using a procedural tactic known as the Magic Minute, which stretched into the magic 8 hours and 32 minutes. He shared stories from Americans who will be impacted by cuts in Trump's mega bill, including to Medicaid, which will leave at least 15 million more people in the U.S. without health insurance. That's according to updated bill text and CNN's analysis of previous Congressional Budget Office numbers.
Our job is to stand up for the poor, the sick, and the afflicted, the least, the lost, and the left behind, everyday Americans. That's what Matthew teaches us. And that's not what's happening in this one big, ugly bill.
Now, in that marathon speech, Jeffries broke Kevin McCarthy's record of the longest House floor speech in modern history. He eventually did stop talking, and when he did, Republicans passed the bill. It will now head to President Trump's desk, and he is expected to sign it tomorrow within his self-imposed July 4th deadline. CNN's Kristen Holmes is at the White House. CNN's Arlette Saenz is on Capitol Hill. Kristen, I know you've been doing a lot of reporting on how the White House, obviously we know how they're reacting. They're quite happy. How they got to this point and what the promises and conversations were like with those holdouts to get them to yes.
Yeah, I mean, some of the promises might have just been, we're not going to primary you in 2 years if you vote alongside this bill. But in addition to that, we know that they learned a big lesson, the administration, from the first time around, which was you need to catch more flies with honey. And they had various lawmakers, different groups, both moderates and conservative, to the White House to discuss their concerns and actually hear them out on them. We know that President Trump and his team promised executive orders when it comes to implementation, particularly around electric vehicles and energy. We also know that the team took the time to walk through the Medicaid cuts with the various House members who were concerned about them, giving them talking points and the fact that telling them it was not going to go into effect for 3 years so that hospitals would have time to prepare, telling them that the states would still be able to allocate those different funds, meaning that if your state prioritizes one thing over another when it comes to who receives Medicaid, that would be honored. And this was a long time consuming process. President Trump was a very big part of it. We are told, in fact, the White House official said he was omnipresent as this was going on, but he was on the phone until early hours of the morning trying to convince these lawmakers that it was time to vote and get on board with this. Just a reminder, they did not want this to go back to the Senate, so they were looking for any way they could try and convince these lawmakers to get on board with the current product so as not to prolong the process. And I do want to note, when it comes to these threats of primaries and the midterms, the White House official said there were no direct threats by President Trump. However, it was conveyed and made clear that they know his political power, and they know that he wasn't going to tolerate anyone who voted against his agenda. But right now, as you noted, Dana, they are feeling very good. I saw the Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, as she was walking out to go on this trip to Iowa, and she said that they were very happy.
I am sure they are. Kristen, thank you so much. Arlette, now to you down Pennsylvania Avenue. There were only 2 Republican members after all of the sort of hand-wringing by a lot of Republicans about different concerns with this bill. Only 2 voted no. Tell us who they were and what you're hearing from those others who got themselves to yes.
Well, you know, Dana, we've talked to so many GOP holdouts over the course of the past 24 hours. And in so many of those conversations, those meetings they had with President Trump is what they touted as really sealing the deal for them. Of course, House Speaker Mike Johnson and the president had to stitch together GOP support from various factions. You know, there were conservatives who were concerned that the Senate bill did too much, did not do enough to cut spending, while there were others who, more moderate lawmakers, who were concerned that the Senate version had too steep of cuts to Medicaid. But ultimately, those conversations with the president helped push a lot of those people who were on the fence over to the yes column. We caught up earlier with Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee, who bluntly said that had this bill had to go back to the Senate, it may have just died there, that they didn't feel like they could have gotten someone like a Senator Lisa Murkowski back on board with another version. But even as they were able to muster up that support among the GOP conference, there are still 2 Republicans who voted against this bill, and that is Congressman Brian Fitzpatrick of Pennsylvania and Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky. Now, Massie was a no on this initial bill when the House had voted on the first version back in May, and President Trump has already threatened to primary him heading into 2026. But this is what he had to tell reporters right after casting that no vote for the president's bill.
Looks like the big bill's going to pass, but it wasn't beautiful enough for me to vote for it.
Now, as for Fitzpatrick, he said that one of the reasons he voted no was because of those steep cuts to Medicaid. He is from a swing district in Pennsylvania, and that is part of the challenge that will face these Republican lawmakers as they're heading back home to their districts and trying to sell this bill to their constituents heading into the 2026 midterm elections.
Yeah, Fitzpatrick is one of only 3 Republicans who are sitting in districts that Kamala Harris won, but he is the only one who voted no, interestingly enough. Thanks to you both for your excellent reporting today and throughout the last week and more on this. Let's turn to one of the specific effects of what this is going to do, and a specific state where we are going to hone in on now, and that is West Virginia. West Virginia went for Donald Trump by 42 percentage points in the 2024 election, one of the biggest margins in the country. Medicaid in West Virginia covers about 25 to 35% of the population. So what impact will the president's legislation have on the state of West Virginia, the people who put him in office? Well, I'm going to discuss that right now with West Virginia Attorney General John McCuskey. Now, I should say that state attorneys general play a significant role in reshaping healthcare policy across the country. So, General, thank you so much for being here. 38% of people on Medicaid in West Virginia are not working, meaning that they could lose insurance if they can't meet certain work requirements. The president of the West Virginia Rural Health Association told the Washington Post that this puts at least 5 hospitals at risk of immediate closure. Here's what they said, quote, "In a lot of our communities, the hospital is the economic driver. So if we don't have a hospital to provide care, other businesses aren't going to want to locate in those communities." How are you going to work to ensure that that doesn't happen, both in terms of healthcare and the business impact?
Yeah, and thank you so much for having me, Dana. And I think it is important to recognize what a huge victory this is for the president today. And here in West Virginia, we have a payer mix that is unacceptable. We need to have less West Virginians that are on Medicare and Medicaid, and we need to raise up those who are struggling into the middle class. And I think there's a lot in this bill, specifically for West Virginia as it relates to coal and oil and gas, that is going to enable us to reinvigorate our economy and have less people that are reliant on these programs in the first place. But to answer your specific question, a couple of things have happened in this bill that I think make some of this hyperbolic language maybe a little overstated. The first is that we have a runway on the provider tax, and that's going to give our rural hospitals an amount of time for them to enable themselves to reform their funding streams to maintain their ability to care for the people in West Virginia. The second thing is that we have a $50 billion fund that is designed to help ease this new bill into the economy here in West Virginia. I don't anticipate any immediate problems for any folks who are entirely needy of these programs. What I do see is that this bill is likely going to ask some folks to be part of the process, to either go and get a job or to be looking for a job or to volunteer in order to maintain these benefits that so many other hardworking West Virginians every single day are paying to provide.
So you said there's a runway. I think what you're referring to is the fact that there are a few years, I think 3 years before some of these cuts are implemented. What makes you so sure that these rural hospitals, who are in many cases strapped to begin with, even with the current formula of funding, can actually reform in such a way that they can still help those who need it the most in your state?
What makes me so sure is my personal relationships with the people that run these hospitals. I'm in constant communication with these folks, and they are really wonderful, amazing people who have a mission. And people who have a mission to care for people in West Virginia, and there's just something about the people here that we do not allow our mission to be derailed by anything. And what they'll do is they'll take the new rules and everything that's in this bill, and they will digest it, and we'll figure out a pathway forward. But what I know is that the vitriolic language that comes out of our politics these days doesn't do anything to help this. What we see is Congress people accusing their colleagues of killing their neighbors, right? That's not what this is doing. And we know for a fact that Congress people are never trying to do that. This bill is trying to change what has been a generational problem where we were going to lose funding for these programs eventually anyways. And so this is, I believe, a really great first step in finding pathways to get not only people back into, will ensure that our rural hospitals have the funding they need and the time they need to make sure that they're viable going forward.
So that's one aspect. Another, as you know, is SNAP, formerly known as food stamps. According to the Senate on Budget and Policy Priorities, 16% of West Virginia's population is on SNAP. The question for you is, given the reforms, cuts in SNAP, how are you going to be sure that West Virginians who need it are going to maintain their ability to get the assistance that they need in order to eat?
Yeah, in 2023, our state legislature passed work requirements for SNAP here in West Virginia, and all the same arguments that you're hearing coming out of the left today were set forth in our House chamber here in West Virginia, and none of the catastrophic results have manifested themselves. West Virginia has long had a history, unfortunately, of poverty. And again, what we really want is less people to need SNAP. And I believe that this bill doesn't do anything to harm those who truly need it now, and will do so much to help to raise the standard of living for people here in West Virginia that hopefully that number, which is catastrophic, 63% of people in West Virginia on SNAP, which is, really a direct result of a lot of the war on our natural resources industries that are addressed in this bill. What you'll see is that the people that truly need it are still going to have access to it, and we're hopefully going to be raising the standard of living for so many people in West Virginia that won't be a program that they need.
West Virginia Attorney General John McCuskey, thank you so much for being here today. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much, and happy 4th to everybody out there.
Thank you. You too. President Trump is speaking live. Let's listen.
D.C. has to become a very safe place, and we're not going to let anything bad happen to D.C. That's our beautiful D.C., and we're not going to let anything bad, and we'll have something to say about it next week.
Why did you hold back why did you pause weapons shipments to Ukraine?
What?
Why did you pause weapons shipments?
We haven't. We're giving weapons, but we've given so many weapons. But we are giving weapons, and we're working with them and trying to help them. But we haven't. You know, Biden emptied out our whole country giving them weapons, and we have to make sure that we have enough for ourselves. Who are you with? Oh, no wonder. Go ahead. Well, I think it's going to be really a message of proudness. You're going to be proud of your country because our country is doing fantastically well. The economy is great. You saw the stock market today. We're setting records, and in every aspect of our country, we're doing well, despite the fact that we inherited millions of people that shouldn't have been here. And I think we have crime stats that are coming out that are showing the lowest numbers we've had in many years. And that also despite the fact that a lot of people are here that shouldn't have been let into our country. So they're going to be very proud tomorrow. So we're signing at about 5 o'clock. And at about 5 o'clock, we're going to have B-2s and F-22s and F-35s flying right over the White House. And the Speaker and I and John Thune, we're all there together with I think most Republican senators and congressmen and women. And it's going to be a great day. So we'll be signing with those beautiful planes flying right over our heads. All right?
What are your expectations for the next round of talks with Steve Waycroft and his Iranian counterpart?
Well, we're going to see. Steve is a great guy. He's a great negotiator. Iran does want to speak, and I think they'd like to speak to me. And it's time that they do. We're not looking to hurt them. We're looking to let them be a country again. They got beat up, and, you know, they were both exhausted, frankly. But Iran really got beat up, and I think they want to meet. I mean, I know they want to meet, and if it's necessary, I'll do it. But Steve is involved and very much involved, and he's done a fantastic job. One more?
President, on Gaza, do you still want the U.S. to take over Gaza as a part of a peace?
I want the people of Gaza to be safe, more importantly.
So that's
I want to see safety for the people of Gaza. They've gone through hell. Thank you very much, everybody.